Minister is here, joined by the Director General. The Minister is going to read a statement, after which we will have an opportunity to take questions. Our organization is representing the journalists, so she probably has a long list of questions. I do know that the CBC will be taking this live as well, so viewers at home will be able to follow the proceedings here. Just over to you.
Thank you very much, Jimiela, and good morning to the colleagues from the media. Thank you for being here. I know you all want to be where the Christmas lights are being lit and all of the exciting things that are happening now, but I'm really grateful that you're here. I'd like to begin by conveying on behalf of myself and the department our deepest condolences to the family, friends of my comrade, Mr. Jeff Deutsch, my former cabinet colleague and former ambassador of South Africa to Sri Lanka and Thailand. I also wish to express sincere condolences to the family of former Ambassador Johannes, who served at our embassy in the Vatican and other postings in the diplomatic service. I'm truly saddened by the loss of these two colleagues and comrades. We called this media briefing today to reflect on the work we've been doing during the year 2022 to advance South Africa's foreign policy objectives. Our intention is to highlight some of the achievements we have made, the challenges we face, as well as set out some of the activities of the year ahead. So for purposes of this briefing, we'll focus on the following: the incoming chairing of the BRICS in 2023, secondly, the African Union, which remains our primary vehicle through which we conduct diplomacy and trade with the rest of our continent. We'll also focus on the United Nations, our premier international organization through which the world pursues peace and development. And then we'll speak to the matter of the strengthening of bilateral relations with key partners. I should also say that 2022 was also significant in getting a new DG, DG Dangle, who assumed office this year. So as you know, from 2023, exactly on the 1st of January, South Africa will become the chair of BRICS. This role rotates on an annual basis among the member states of BRICS and will be taking over from the outgoing chair, the People's Republic of China. Our main objective in engaging in the BRICS family is to enhance the future growth and development of South Africa, as well as to strengthen intra-BRICS relations and mutually beneficial cooperation between our countries. South Africa will continue as chair to emphasize concrete cooperation that contributes both directly and indirectly to the priorities of a better South Africa, a better Africa, and a better world through our partnership with key players of the Global South on issues related to global governance and its reform, as well as development issues. A country that chairs the BRICS formation has the following responsibilities, among others. Firstly, is to provide strategic leadership during our tenure as BRICS chair, in close consultation with other members, based on the chair's agenda or priorities and previously agreed upon BRICS decisions. Secondly, we have the responsibility to schedule summit, ministerial, Sherpa, and other BRICS meetings and events based on consensus among the BRICS members. So you would know there are various sectoral groupings within the BRICS family. We often have over 100 meetings in a year that fall under the various sector groupings. The third task is to undertake particular tasks relevant to the summit in consultation with other members, including selecting the summit theme, proposing the summit agenda or program, and submitting a zero draft of the summit declaration. And fourthly, we have to ensure continuity and coordination in BRICS work and activities, especially through our Sherpas or the Sous-Sherpa formation, which is a very active one that has quite a huge mandate of ensuring that whatever we agree as the program for the year is actually pursued and achieved. Also, the Sherpas play a key role in negotiating the content of the declaration, ensuring that the thematic areas are maintained and are part of what is the deliberations of BRICS. South Africa's membership in BRICS has, I think, contributed to further expanding BRICS' geographic reach, representativity, and inclusiveness. You would know South Africa has played an important role in encouraging the outreach role of BRICS and drawing in non-BRICS members into the summit in order for the leadership of countries in the specific region in which the chair is located can derive value from the deliberations and the work of BRICS. The BRICS countries now constitute the largest trading partners of Africa and the largest new investors on the continent. And the exponential growth potential of the BRICS Africa Economic Partnership is very well recognized. You would know that we are, as South Africa, going to be the chair that is really confronting this increasingly vocal demand for expansion of BRICS. It will be probably in our year's chair that the BRICS family makes the decision as to whether there's a BRICS plus, as to whether we expand. Then on the African Union, we began 2022, as is tradition, with our preparations for the annual assembly of heads of state of the African Union, which was held in Addis in February this year. Among decisions taken there, the Assembly elected 15 members of the African Union Peace and Security Council. We were elected, South Africa, alongside Cameroon, Djibouti, Morocco, Namibia, Nigeria, Burundi, the Republic of Congo, Uganda, Tanzania, Tunisia, Zimbabwe, Ghana, Senegal, and the Gambia. Those countries are the members of the AU Peace and Security Council. Members of the Peace and Security Council hold terms of 2 and 3 years, and they are all non-permanent seats, so we rotate. The presidency of the Peace and Security Council rotates among its members every month, just as happens with the UN Security Council, and we as South Africa are due to assume the role of chair in February 2023. The Peace and Security Council is tasked with a number of responsibilities. Among them are to anticipate and prevent disputes and conflicts, to undertake peacemaking initiatives, peace building and peace support missions, to recommend interventions in a member state in respect of grave circumstances, especially war crimes, a suspected genocide, or indeed crimes against humanity. It's also got to promote coordinations between regional mechanisms and the African Union regarding peace, security, and stability on the continent of Africa, and finally must support and facilitate action of humanitarian support in situations of armed conflict or major natural disasters. I was really thrilled this year as one of the summits we held discussed the creation of an African humanitarian fund, and so gave life to one of the aspirations we had had for many years in the African Union, that we would be able to respond far more speedily in situations of natural disaster or where there's need for urgent humanitarian support. Of course, the role of regional economic communities is especially important in support of the work of the Peace and Security Council. So RECs, such as our own SADC, is vital for conflict resolution on the continent, and we need to ensure that we strengthen the capacity of all regional economic communities to play this supportive, coordinating role. We know that regional economic communities are closest to the action and must always be the first to raise alarm and act. And even in instances where we want to do much more on prevention of war and conflict, it is the RECs that must raise the alarm and help us to have the Peace and Security Council actively responding. You would be aware that in August this year, South Africa relinquished its role as chair of the SADC organ on politics, defense, and security cooperation. But it's important to point out, while we are no longer chair, we are an outgoing member of the organ and so continue to play a role in the Troika. The organ is the mechanism through which SADC addresses threats to Southern African regional peace and stability. As chair of the SADC organ Troika, South Africa and other organ members and the rest of the region continue to provide support to the Republic of Mozambique as our neighboring country combats terrorism and acts of violent extremism. In October and November, many South Africans will recall that our country was honored to host the negotiations for an agreement on the cessation of hostilities between the government of the Federal Republic of Ethiopia and the Tigray People's Liberation Front. The negotiations were led by the former President of Nigeria, His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, supported by the former President of Kenya, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, and the former Deputy President of South Africa, Her Excellency Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka. The agreement signaled a commitment to ending the use of force to settle differences and disputes, and I believe confirmed the correctness of South Africa's principled position that we should seek to resolve differences through meaningful dialogue and diplomacy. South Africa believes that the agreement between these parties paves the way for the silencing of guns, not only in Ethiopia, but in the immediate region and throughout the continent. We said during the signing of the agreement that peace building is much more difficult than waging war. The real heroes are those who work toward building peace and sustaining it. We therefore continue to call on the leaders of both sides to work toward maintaining this peace by implementing the agreement in full. And we're very, very happy that we instituted the practice of a coordinating and monitoring role for the facilitators. I think this was absolutely important, and I have noted its impact in that in the ongoing deliberations on implementation of the agreement, the facilitators have been an important voice of reason in assisting the parties to reach agreement on action. on the matter of South Africa and the United Nations. Through the course of this year, we've seen the United Nations face perhaps one of its biggest tests since its establishment, as conflict broke out in February 2022 between Russia and Ukraine. The preamble to the UN Charter states that members of the UN will practice tolerance and live together in peace with one another as good neighbors, that they will unite their strength to maintain international peace and security and ensure by the acceptance of principles and the institution of methods that armed force shall not be used save in the common interest, and employ international machinery for the promotion of the economic and social advancement of all peoples. Article 24 of the UN Charter says that the 15 members of the UN Security Council, 5 of whom are permanent members, have the primary responsibility to promote international peace and security. We believe that the composition and functioning of the Security Council in its current form is not representative of the world we live in today, and thus they are not in a position to discharge their main charter responsibility, as we have all seen. The ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine has starkly exposed the inadequacy of the UN system and highlighted the need for serious attention to our repeated calls for substantive reform of the Security Council and indeed of the UN itself. Notwithstanding all the challenges facing the United Nations, we are one of the countries that continues to believe that this global organization remains the only viable mechanism through which the international community must strive for peace and common development. So while we call for reform, we don't want to remove the United Nations as the premier multilateral institution. South Africa will continue to play an active role in the United Nations, including in its organs, such as the Human Rights Council. We were really honored and privileged in October this year when South Africa was elected overwhelmingly by members of the UN General Assembly to serve as a member of the UN Human Rights Council for the period 2023 to 2025. The UN Human Rights Council consists of 47 members who are elected directly and individually by secret ballot by the members of the General Assembly. The membership is based on equitable geographic distribution, and seats are distributed among regional groups, with the Africa group having 13 seats. And we were really honored to receive the highest number of votes of all the countries that had put their name forward to be elected to the Council. South Africa has undertaken to promote respect for the integrity and dignity of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. We will also support the regional office of the High Commissioner, which is based here in Pretoria. Our government has signed a memorandum of intent with the office, and we are currently processing a host country agreement with the OHCHR. We will continue with our unwavering position to advocate for a balanced, sustainable development program within the human rights framework as underlined in the Vienna Declaration and Program of Action. In this regard, our country will be one of the chief proponents of a balanced agenda of the Human Rights Council, which reflects, among others, the primacy of achieving the realization of the rights add to development, as well as moral human rights issues such as the eradication of poverty and underdevelopment. On the strengthening of bilateral relations, I'm glad to report that the promotion of economic diplomacy is a necessary intervention given the domestic challenges facing South Africa, which, as you know, include poverty, unemployment, and inequality. Improving economic and trade relations with many of South Africa's key partners will go a long way in attracting more foreign direct investment and creating jobs. I've been horrified to hear there are some of our colleagues who ask what is the value of diplomatic representation. And I get very amazed by this because as South Africa secures more foreign direct investment, it is those very diplomatic missions that are approached by international business leaders to find out more about South Africa, to find out about the value of investing in our country, and to eventually make the decision to invest in South Africa. So I believe that our diplomatic missions bring great value, and as I see an increase in foreign direct investment in South Africa, I know that our missions are representing our country really well and supporting its key development goals. Africa ensure that existing structured diplomatic and trade mechanisms are activated with key trade partners such as China, the United States, Germany, the United Kingdom, Korea, Japan, Singapore, Nigeria, Kenya, Mozambique, and Botswana. I wish in this regard to thank our deputy ministers for their energetic role in strengthening bilateral relations. They've really done amazing work this year. So let me conclude by indicating that I will lead a South African delegation to the second United States Africa Leaders Summit, which is scheduled to take place from the 13th to the 15th of December in Washington, D.C. I will represent President Ramaphosa, who, owing to a busy schedule, is unable to attend the summit. You will recall that the last United States Africa Leaders Summit was convened in 2014 under former President Barack Obama. 49 African states, as well as the chairperson of the African Union Commission, are expected to participate in the summit. The renewal of the US Africa Leaders Summit follows President Biden's intervention during the 34th summit of the African Union in February 2021, in which he underscored the US commitment and readiness to partner with the continent in taking our relations to new heights. The Leaders Summit will discuss three thematic topics, namely partnering on Agenda 2063, multilateral partnerships with Africa to meet global challenges, and promoting food security and food systems resilience on 15th December 2022. Particular leaders have been asked to speak on one of these themes. I will deliver remarks on the first theme of partnering on Agenda 2063. On Tuesday, the 13th of December, the following events will take place as part of the summit. There will be an African and Diaspora Young Leaders Forum in which young South Africans have been invited to participate. It will be held under the theme, Amplifying Voices, Building Partnerships That Last. Then there will be a Peace, Security and Governance Forum under the theme, Delivering Democracy and Security Dividends. And thirdly, Conservation, Climate Adaptation, and a Just Energy Transition, held under the theme, building our green energy together. On Wednesday, the 14th of December, we will have a US-Africa Business Breakfast meeting, which will be followed by the inauguration of the United States-Africa Business Forum and discussions on a range of topics, which include charting the course, the future of US-Africa trade investment relations, growing agribusiness, and partnerships to strengthen food security and its value chains, and advancing digital connectivity through partnerships to enable inclusive growth through technology. President Biden will deliver a keynote address at the Business Forum on the 14th. Our delegation comprises myself, the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Minister Ibrahim Patel, and senior officials from the Departments of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, Defense and Military Veterans, as well as Health. Apart from attending and participating in these events, I will also have bilateral meetings with some of my counterparts, both of the United States and other countries of Africa, and with leading captains of industry. Well, colleagues, as you would see, our engagement with the world is multifaceted. We are fortunate to have strong relations with all major countries and regions, and we are a significant factor in global governance matters. We remain, as South Africa, a champion for multilateralism, which is guided by the Charter of the United Nations and international law. We have stated very clearly to partners with whom we may have disagreed on some issues that when we apply international law, it should be applied evenly and not selectively. If we do so, it will then play its full role in holding all, including the most powerful actors on the global stage, accountable, and will thus become a platform for building peace. I would like to conclude by expressing the hope that a peaceful, negotiated outcome to the current conflict in Ukraine will become a reality very, very soon. And I wish each and every one of you a peaceful and safe festive season, and I thank you. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much, Minister. Just to acknowledge those that are watching at home, this briefing is live on the NCA and SABC. It's also on the Dirco YouTube channel as well as on YouTube video. We can take questions now. You know the drill. Introduce yourself, and hopefully it will be on the content that the Minister was unpacking. Let's start here.
Thank you so much. Yes, it will be on the content the Minister touched on, but also issues related to the content. Minister, the issue of the war in Ukraine in particular, are we likely to see an end to this war? Are we seeing the two parties finding one another, or we are still at a situation where it's still not clear whether they will agree to talk? The other issue, Minister, when we talk about international relations and the South African foreign policy, the governing party is going to have an elective conference and they will discuss policies. Are we likely to see anything new? I know you do contribute to the Committee on International Relations and Peace and Security. And finally, are you not worried that women are left out for senior positions, and when for so many years, since 1997, when you agreed that there will be equal representation in all strategic positions? I know the defense will be top 6 is not a structure, but you can't talk about women being affirmed as leaders when you exclude them at the top leadership. should they continue to deputize like we did when we were fighting colonialism and there was no movement?
Okay.
Thank you, Jason. I have 3 questions, and I'm asking 3 questions on behalf of Peter Fabricius, who is in Cape Town and can't be here in person. So I'll start with my 3 questions. And thank you, Jason, for indulging me. Minister, you were talking about the Ethiopian peace negotiations here in Pretoria, and that it turned out to be a good news story in terms of reaching that agreement. There was some talk about South Africa sending a humanitarian donation, and I know that's still needed. The needs haven't evaporated. What is the possibility of us making, or have we made that kind of donation as yet? You also mentioned the African Union upcoming summit, and earlier this year in January there was a bit of a deadlock about the issue of Israel as an observer. It's been kicked to a committee. What kind of progress do you think has been made on that? And will this be an issue again this next year, at the next year's summit? And my third question is relations with Rwanda. We were on a path to recovering those the relations were on a path to recovery. And you met with the foreign minister last year, but this year, to my shock, I discovered that Rwandan citizens, ordinary people, can't get visas to come to South Africa. This happened to a colleague of mine. And I just want to know what happened. Was it the Pegasus issue? Why are we suddenly frosty with Rwanda again? And Peter's questions. Sorry, they're not.
Yeah, you can go ahead, Peter.
Okay, fine, these are Peter's questions. On behalf of my colleague Peter Fabricius, they're not easier, unfortunately. The first question is about Lady R, the vessel that he wrote about that Dr. Simonstown recently. I know it's been a Department of Defense issue because it's their key point, but as International Relations Minister, does South Africa fear that whoever bought or sold the cargo that came with the Lady R, and that this could fall foul of United States sanctions, because the vessel itself is under sanctions? Also a question about Eswatini. It's been a year since President Ramaphosa announced that he had met King Mswati and that they agreed on a national dialogue and that it was going to be launched within months, and yet nothing has happened so far that we are aware of. And the King Mswati is showing signs of resistance to launching this dialogue. What is South Africa and SADC intending to do about it? My last question, or Peter's last question, is South Africa's Deputy Ambassador to Sudan, Zabantu Ngobo. What happened to the Deputy Ambassador whose partner was implicated in a plot to kill the embassy's intelligence officer? Is she still Deputy Ambassador? If not, what has happened to her? And what's happened to her partner? Apparently he's wanted in Sudan. Will he be handed to Sudan or charged in South Africa? Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Peter. You'll be the last for this round. Try the mic next door. You're on the wrong road.
Hello. Okay, thank you. Linda Damasingani from ESA. Minister, of course, we've seen a lot of different reaction to the Section 89 report in Parliament on Phala as well as the President's role and the findings around it. As Minister, are you fielding any concerns or questions from your counterparts around the consequences of this report? Is the department concerned that we may have perhaps a different president come 2023, for example? Are there any issues around the bilateral consequences of what we may see come out of NASRIC? I would also like to get your thoughts on your reaction to the report and what you think the president should do. And lastly, as a department, are you concerned or are you getting any reaction around the talks of SA being grey listed? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, please.
Well, I think these are far more interesting questions than last year. Looks like there's been some thinking. Right. Well, firstly, I don't know, whether there's likely to be an end. It is our hope that there would be. I must say that in the last 4 weeks, the word diplomacy and negotiation has been mentioned many more times than we heard in the period between February and November. So it would seem that everybody from President Biden to several other leaders, including most recently President Putin, are beginning to talk about negotiations. I always feel though that to discuss negotiations by making demands is not a very good process, so I am worried that people are negotiating by stating positions in the media. They're not talking about getting around the table. We don't know who the facilitators would be. So we continue to engage our colleagues in the EU as well as the US to say, could we have a proper mechanism? Could we have the United Nations Secretary General lead a team as we had with President Obasanjo, where we know who the facilitators are and that the parties are around a table substantively framing a possible agreement. So the talk of the possibility of negotiations, of a readiness, even with the conditions that both President Zelensky and President Putin are talking about, suggest a readiness to begin. So there is that. It's not certain as yet, but at least those words, negotiation, and what the content might be, have begun to occupy the public space. Hence my saying, I hope this will be a spur toward real negotiations and hopefully the conclusion of this awful conflict. Well, the elective conference and women, it is indeed, I think, really a great concern that women are not being nominated for senior leadership positions within the African National Congress, especially worrying because women make up the majority of membership of the ANC, and so should be most concerned about ensuring that women do lead, are nominated, and successfully secure leadership positions. There are many, many capable candidates that have been put forward, but I'm not seeing their name gaining the traction that one would want to see. So I really believe that the time has come and that the ANC needs to look at itself and begin to say, let's really alter this situation, because we have many women who are really capable and who have good skills, excellent integrity, and who I believe would lead the organization very, very well. On the questions of Ethiopia, current questions, yes, I am looking at this at humanitarian donation. I do think South Africa should make some form of support available. You would know, of course, that I have this case in court with respect to the Cuba donation matter. So one is not certain, do you act when there's such an order? What exactly, is the situation? And we continue to pursue an appeal because we really believe the judgment was flawed. So on Ethiopia, on Tigray, I do believe we must make some help available. We're looking at our resources, and I hope we will be able to announce something early in January. On Israel, our position is clear, as is that of, I believe, the majority of African Union member states. Unfortunately, that task team, which I never supported, even at the Assembly, has not met. We are clear, and we're supported by several of the larger countries, that this must not be allowed to happen. And I think really what I notice is, rather than make a clear decision to say this decision is unacceptable, the AU has sort of assumed a frozen position of status quo. The Nigerian minister has a particular phrase that he uses, I can't quite recall it, but the situation remains as it was prior to the decision of the AU chairperson, and I'm almost certain that it would not be acted upon. But I would like it to be reversed in formal terms in a meeting of our leadership. On Rwanda, I continue to work on having stable, good relations with Rwanda, and I have been having very good discussions with my colleague, Minister Mutsoaledi. We are working to ensure that the matter of visas is eased for Rwandan citizens with the necessary protections, given concerns around incidents in the past, which I know you're fully familiar with. But I do think this coolness that sometimes exists is really not helpful to both countries, given the role we play on the continent and in our particular specific regions. So it's something myself and Minister Biruta are working on in good cooperation, and we get on very, very well. So I believe that we will be able to resolve this. On Lady R, the question is better posed to Minister Modise and the colleagues responsible for the borderline, since this matter is now in our waters, so Home Affairs, etc., Defense and Military Veterans are the responsible departments. Indeed, our colleagues in the United States have expressed concern, but I think we need to clear up as to what exactly is this cargo, if there was any, so that we can assure or give an indication that South Africa did not breach any sanctions. Of course, unilateral sanctions are a problem. If they're UN sanctions, it's much easier to act. But when you have from an individual country, it becomes invidious in terms of interference of sovereign countries' responsibility for their own foreign policy. But it is something that I do direct you to. I ask Peter to speak to Minister Modise and our colleagues in Home Affairs about. On Eswatini, I'm pleased to be able to confirm that following the meeting of the Troika on the sideline of the Lesotho Prime Minister's inauguration, we had agreed that President Geingob, the current chair of the organ, would continue efforts to meet His Majesty the King of Eswatini to discuss this matter of a national dialogue. Following that meeting in Lesotho, President Geingob made an arrangement and an appointment with King Mswati and proceeded to Eswatini. A report was provided at the last ministerial meeting in Namibia on the discussions held with respect to a national dialogue, and the organ chair confirmed that it had been made quite clear to Eswatini that we did believe a national dialogue is an extremely important step that should be taken following the agreement between President Ramaphosa and King Mswati, and that as the SADC organ, we will work step in step with the Kingdom of Eswatini to help them to hold a successful national dialogue. So that is where we are, and the organ chair will report to a Troika meeting early in 2023. But we believe the national dialogue remains the only possible step toward bringing stability to the Kingdom of Eswatini. I'm going to leave your Sudan Deputy Ambassador question. Do we have a position Deputy Ambassador? I don't know what, is it Minister Plenipotentiary? Yes, the Minister Plenipotentiary colleague. the DG will answer it. He says he's very ready to answer it. So let me deal with the rest. Ms. Matikani. We won't have a different president in 2023. I think it will remain President Ramaphosa unless something unexpected occurs. But in my own limited analysis, I believe that he will remain president in 2023. On my reaction to the report, I think it's really a matter that President Ramaphosa has to deal with, since he is the person that is the subject of the report, and he's acted in terms of the law and the Constitution by following the steps of taking the report on review. It is his right to do so, whether we agree. Will indicate my reaction in Parliament by voting in the session. On the grey listing of South Africa, we await the FATF meeting in February. We have done all that we believe is necessary to address the inadequacies that they had indicated, and I do think that South Africa has really paid close attention to strengthening the inadequacies with respect to money laundering and so on. And I think this issue, which has come up of being a country which sponsorship of terrorism money easily exits the country, is something that we are looking at extremely closely as South Africa. And I think just compared to many countries that have been grey listed, South Africa's financial regulatory system and practices are far superior. So I would be very, very surprised if we are grey listed, and I think the actions that the Cabinet and the Minister of Finance have taken should hopefully put the matter to rest. And if not, we will then have a very clear sense of exactly what it is that remains unaddressed, and we'll make sure we address it. But I have great faith in the financial systems and practices of South Africa.
The DG just needs to answer one question.
Thank you, Minister. I'll be quick. Speak the ambitious question. With regard to our former diplomat in Sudan, at the time of the investigations, we did not make a unit based on the available evidence. Both the diplomat and the department returned to South Africa for further investigations both here in South Africa and in Sudan. The investigations eventually will continue. And if the Sudanese authorities have more evidence available that will warrant a request for extradition from the U.S. legal assistance, then we will challenge it. To date, I have not received the request for the extradition.
Thank you very much. Last round, 2 questions. Over there, and still reading number 5. And Mangwele will be the last. Then we'll close. Let's start there. I don't think our microphone is working. They want to come here also.
Turkmen Turkish Madam Minister, you mediated peace process in Ethiopia. It was important. But you know the Libya situation is more challenging because foreign forces in Libya, and it's destabilized the West Africa and the Central Africa. You have a very important relation you had during the Gaddafi's Libya, President Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, President Zuma. So do you want to play a bigger role in maybe mediating in Libya? Because African Union, you have a media peace conference, but the Berlin is, Europeans are organizing peace process, and they are preferring some foreign forces in Libya against other foreign forces. And UN President Ramaphosa made a statement to call foreign forces to leave the Libya. So you want to play a big role in Libya's peace process. Thank you.
Just to follow up on my questions, Minister. I heard you saying that the President is taking the report on review, and you would be expressing your thoughts during your vote in Parliament. Do you believe perhaps he should resign while he takes his report on review? And I think you missed my first question in terms of whether you've received any concerns from any of your counterparts in other countries, perhaps, or even ambassadors who are stationed in different parts of the country, whether they're receiving any issues or concerns around that report. Thank you.
Marco, you be the last.
Back to the war in Ukraine and Russia. Minister, when last did the President engage with President Putin in particular? And also, has the President spoken to the Ukrainian President Zelensky? And the last question, the President has proposed that the AU be admitted as a member of the G20 group. We saw President Biden issuing a statement that he does support the proposal, as he did with the TRIPS waiver during the debates around sharing of information and knowledge on vaccine for COVID-19. Are you optimistic that very soon or next year we are likely to see the AU as an organization being admitted as a permanent member of the G20 like the EU? Thank you.
On Libya, South Africa remains involved and engaged with Libya, and of course we want to see peace in Libya. Our position has been, again, as with Eswatini, that what you need is an inclusive process. You can't leave anyone behind. It can't be General Haftar, the former interim Prime Minister, and the current interim President, who are seen as the parties that discuss peace and negotiated outcome. You have to involve the various tribal groupings that have very powerful forces that are also playing a role in the conflict, being a very worrying one. So we have had meetings with these groupings to say we are ready to assist. In particular, we've said we are happy to help with crafting an interim settlement outcome, and eventually with assistance through giving support to some of our leaders who participated in the negotiations in South Africa around the constitution, that they could play a role in helping Libya to craft a final constitution. So we've suggested a two-step process, which the interim president, their team, and others we've spoken to in Libya seem quite interested in. South Africa is involved both bilaterally, but also as one of the 5 countries in the interim, in the high-level committee of the African Union, which has been charged with the responsibility of engaging on the Libya matter. The high-level panel is chaired by President Sassou Nguesso of Congo Brazzaville. We've had meetings as the high-level panel in Algeria, South Africa, Congo Brazzaville, Nigeria. Who's number 5? Country number 5 now. But there are 5 countries that are part of the high-level panel, and our chair, as I said, is President of Congo Brazzaville. He has convened several meetings in which we've deliberated on this matter and sought to find a means of assisting Libya. Last month, before the climate change conference in Sharm el-Sheikh, President Sassou Nguesso went to Libya to hold a meeting with all the parties, including the leaders of the various rebel groups, and they've agreed that in 2023 we must convene a national dialogue process, which will be led under the chairship of the African Union to really look at the next steps toward peace and stability and a democratic election in Libya. And nobody, we have agreed, or we were briefed by President Sassou Nguesso, should see themselves as the person to be elected in the election that we hope will ensue once all these discussions are complete. So really, in a nutshell, we continue to be engaged and are very keen that Libya should achieve peace. We do think that foreign interference, which is really for exploitation of the resources of Libya, is not assisting that country, and we really have appealed to all those foreign and external parties to allow the African Union to be the key organ that is assisting the Libyan people to arrive at peace. So, we'll continue to raise that with our colleagues, with our Turkish colleagues who played a very important role, with Egypt, with Italy that continues to be very involved, with Germany as well as with France. So we are continuing that process. Yes, now my apologies that I forgot that particular question. One or two colleagues have called, but they don't want the minutiae of the issue. They're more interested in, is South Africa stable? Is there a problem? Should we anticipate that there'll be some kind of conflict emerging which will harm the stability? And I'm assured them, even when the temperature appears very high in South Africa, we remain a stable democracy. And that we have the rule of law, which needs to be exercised to its logical conclusion. And so they must allow the processes to continue and not be alarmed, and start calling on their private sector to withdraw investment or be where I don't think it's that kind of situation. But one or two have called, but generally, I must say a number when they call, say we are asking, it's not because we want to interfere. We respect the sovereign right of South Africa to resolve its problems, but you're our friend, we'd like to know. So those are the kinds of calls I've had. If a diplomat were to talk to me about that, I'd have a real problem. But when it's a foreign minister, it's okay. So that's my response. On the last one, I know President Ramaphosa spoke to President Putin about 2 weeks ago, just after we returned from Mali, and he intends to speak to President Zelensky. So he's kept the line open with both. And of course, he articulated his support for AU being in the G20, and I must say it was received with acclaim throughout the G20 meeting in Indonesia. And I'm sure when we are in India, this matter will be finalized as they assume the chair of G20. So it's enjoying support. It makes logical sense to have AU as chair. I think the question really is, the EU is a member, but they have an institutional framework that has EU Commission President and so on. So who would consistently participate. It's not the rotating chair of the EU. It is the functionaries, von der Leyen and Michel. Now, what we have to resolve, I think, with the AUs in our union is it the chairperson of the Commission or the rotating chair of the AU? It has tended to be the rotating chair who is invited. But once it's a membership, I think we've got to resolve this question. But I don't think there's any objection to AU. we're already thinking as South Africa ahead to 2025 when South Africa will become chair of G20.
That was the last question, Minister, and that brings us to the conclusion of this briefing.
I really want to thank you all, of you who do take an interest, particularly Aaron and Sofena and other colleagues, because I know sometimes, you might think diplomacy is boring. It isn't. It's very interesting, and there's so much that is complex that's happening. I appreciate you giving us an opportunity to speak to South Africans on these matters. Thank you very much, and to everybody, may you have a happy, safe, festive season, and please don't overindulge. Take care of yourself and be back here in 2023. Thank you very much.
We're going to close it off.